Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Vegan World 2026 Moonshot podcast. And today we are going to be talking about a post animal use world with the founders of the Post Animal Use World project, Suzanne McAllister, Dr. Suzanne McAllister, and Piotrowski. I hope I'm not butchering your last name.
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So tell us first about your background and how did you even come to this project?
Would you want to take it first, Suzanne?
Sure. So, as Sailesh said, I'm doctor of psychology, and that's been my career for many years. I woke up, is the way I like to think of it, in 2005 when I read Fast Food Nation and started reading about how our food is produced. And it was horrifying. And that started my transition to veganism, which probably took anywhere from 6 months to a year. I don't know exactly, but it was a process. The last to go was dairy, which I just didn't get it. I guess I didn't want to get it. And then when I finally was educated, I said, okay, well, they in some ways have it the worst of any of the animals. It's kind of pick and choose. But so I became active pretty quickly and had the good fortune to meet Lisa Levinson, who is the founder of Vegan Spirituality Group. And she was in Philadelphia at the time. So I got involved with her group and little by little just started getting involved in activist activities. I've always been an activist from the time I was 18 against the Vietnam War. So I think it's in my blood. I'm not somebody who just complains about things. I think, okay, well, what can I do to make it better and to feel like I'm having some kind of an impact, however small. So I am continuing to be involved with Vegan Spirituality Group of Philadelphia, and I'm the co-organizer of that. And Anne and I met, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago. And I was immediately interested in what Anne was doing and is still doing, which she'll tell you about when she introduces herself. And she and I just started talking. And we've been talking for the last 6 or 7 years. And I guess what happens, or at least has happened to us, is the more we talked about ways of having an impact and how to do that fit with our personalities, we came up with this idea. And it wasn't called Post-Animal Use World initially. I can't even remember what it was, but I'm going to say it was 6 or 8 months ago. And little by little, as we talked about it and played around with graphics and things like that, we came up with the Post-Animal Use World, which I'll let Anne introduce herself, and then we can talk a bit about what the project is and what we're hoping to do with it.
Okay.
So I went vegan in 2012. My professional background is as a counselor, also in therapy. But when I did go vegan, what I expected to be hurdles were not really relevant, really. But figuring out what to eat or how to feed myself and my family, nutritional things, that was readily available information. There were so many cookbooks, and it was fairly easy. But what I didn't expect at all, which as I look back, I think was a little bit naive, is I didn't expect any kind of blowback, any kind of the strong opinions about vegans and how I would be received in my existing community, my existing family and friend groups, and then also just out in the world. And as a counselor, my brain just couldn't, I just wanted to figure out what was going on and how to talk about this in a way that people could receive. And over time, I decided that I was going to test whatever I had taught myself, or whatever I knew about how to communicate, and test it out in the world. And I started to do tables, and at the tables, it was a simple invitation to anybody, any passersby, to come up and have a conversation with me about veganism. So I've been doing that for I met Suzanne actually at my very first table. And it was fate. It was meant to be.
It was.
And and when she says we've been talking ever since, I mean, almost nonstop. We've been talking ever since. So then within the past year, I don't remember exactly when, but we read The Homo Ahimsa by Judy Carmen for our book club. We had a book club. And after that was an inspiration for us. And we started to have conversations about having visions of, so much of what's out there that is helping people to understand what's happening with the animals is very important and necessary, but it's focused very much on the destruction and the death, and I think that's very important. I needed that to really push me into believing something very different than what I grew up believing. So, but with this, what we started to play with was the idea that maybe we could look, what is it that we want? What's the vision? What will it be like when we have what we want? And started to ask a few people, and then this project developed. As therapists, we kind of understand how important it is for clients to set goals in order to get anywhere, in order to make any significant change. So in a way, this relates to, well, what are our goals here? What do we want? So it's really just an exploration and asking people what they imagine.
Can I jump in and just say two things? First of all, thank you for reminding me about, because Homo Ahimsa really was, I think, the driving force. And we're collaborating with Judy. And the way I see this, it was like Judy had this vision, and then we decided to put it into action. I mean, she's putting it into action too in her own way, but I think, made it very concrete. Like, she's thinking about Homo Ahimsa as opposed to Homo sapiens sapiens. And that was so inspiring to me. And I've often thought Homo sapiens sapiens was a misnomer. It is not what we should be calling ourselves. We are anything but Homo sapiens sapiens. So I loved her book. The other thing I just wanted to say about, when Anne was talking about the first time I met her, I too was shocked when I became vegan 16 years ago, that the biggest hurdle was the pushback I got from my family. And some of it was a bit nasty, I have to say. And I realized that we can be very threatening to people. And as Anne said, as therapists, I know that I'm not going to make any headway with the person who's sitting across from me if that person feels threatened by me. And so I think part of what is in Anne's and my minds is, yes, there has to be that jolt and that willingness. But we're there to say, although we are hoping to inspire non-vegans and people who are not there yet, but in a way that they actually start to think of something that may never have crossed their minds before. Like, we're actually using animals? I mean, somebody said that on Sunday night, that word, I think, is not threatening to people, but it makes them think, we are using animals. So,
Right.
anyway, yeah.
It's a very interesting formulation that you have, but when you think about a post-animal use world, we talk about, in Climate Healers, we talk about human earth animal liberation.
Yes.
So for us, a post-animal use world is also a post-human use world.
Exactly.
And also a post-earth use world.
Yes.
We cannot see earth as something to be used.
Yes.
But
yes.
So I've always wondered, now that you bring it together like this, it occurs to me why people resist the indigenous community's formulation. I mean, indigenous community here in Phoenix regards the South Mountain as sacred, and said
Yes.
they didn't want a highway to blast through the South Mountain. But the majority community insisted on blasting that mountain. Okay, because I think they didn't want to acknowledge that that mountain could be sacred for some people.
Yes.
Because it is the using of the earth that they wanted to preserve, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you're saying, Sailesh, is that Climate Healers is even broader because you're bringing in earth and humans.
right?
And ours is more focused on helping humans, which will also help the earth, but helping humans to start thinking about what they're doing.
And I think that the use of the word use, post-animal use world, it is very intentional. I think as we broaden the audience who's contributing to the project, so the project consists of people's visions in the form of essays or music or art, in any way they choose, of a vision of what will it be like. But as we broaden that, I think what we're realizing is that there are two assumptions, at least, in the phrase imagining a post-animal use world. And that is the assumption, one, that we use animals, right?
Yeah.
So that I think that may seem obvious to this audience, but it's not in a general way. It's not obvious to think of it that way. It's so ubiquitous as to that's just the way it is, that there's not a sense of using them, and also that a post-animal use world is even possible. That's just another assumption that's inherent in that the way we're using that terminology. So. But I do think that, I see that too, and I think that's something that really struck me, that I didn't expect when I was early on in being vegan, and that is that it really touches every part of life. It really is not just about using animals for food or fashion or whatever. It touches upon our own sense of ourselves, our relationships with each other, compassion in general, whether it's extended to animals or to others or to any living or the earth. It's amazing how far-reaching it really is.
Right. So do you see we see in our theory of change that all of this should happen simultaneously. You cannot separate one from the other. You cannot say, let's focus on a post-human use world and then let's focus on a post-animal use world. And until we get to a post-human use world, we will continue using animals. I say, it doesn't work. It really has to be all of them put together. And I think including the earth. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that in the projects, I agree with that. I think it does have to happen all simultaneously. I think the point of us focusing on animals in this project is for practicality. It's to be able to ask a pointed question and see what people say. As people begin to explore, even scratch the surface of exploring this, I believe it's inevitable that it like it did for me. I thought it was about just this one thing. What am I making for dinner for my family tonight? And as it turned out, it was about everything.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you, Salish, that it's not one thing leads to another. It's sort of, and it's the way people come into veganism. People come in through, like in Cowspiracy, he was interested in the environment and then found out how animal agriculture was impacting the environment. People come in for health reasons and then they discover the animal aspect. And I came in because I was so horrified by what I was learning about how animals were raised for food. And then I understood or learned about the impact, the environmental impact. So I guess it's what door do you enter?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking of that.
And
but once you get in, you're entering the same room.
Right.
I think
But people will enter and it will choose a different door, whatever door resonates with them. That's the one they will choose. But we have to show them the doors, I think.
And I guess maybe as psychologists, and I know you're a systems person, Salish. So there's family systems, which both Anne and I are familiar with. So we're familiar with systems, but different content areas.
Human systems.
And part of what I'm thinking, just as you asked that question, is I guess perhaps because of what I did for 40 years, working with people get overwhelmed pretty easily. And if we were giving them the whole thing, they might say, I can't, this is too much, unless they were really motivated. And I think, I'll speak for myself, but I think Anne would concur. Our whole hope is that we are motivating and inspiring. So doing the work we do, we're really in the change business. That's what being a therapist is about, is helping people to change either bad habits or how they respond to things, noticing how they respond to things and realizing they have a choice. Both Anne and I practice mindfulness. So that's also a part of, I think, how we think. And so at least when I thought about the post-animal use world and that people were going to share their visions, it was a way for them to actually enter the picture themselves and feel like I have some agency. I have a way to do this. And then my hope is, well, then they're changing that human, and then they're changing the environment. So it comes together, but it's, I think, like we said, what door do you enter?
Right.
And that point about it, that the agency, people having agency, because I think that's a really important point, because if people think that the way that we use animals, but also other humans and the earth, is pretty much a foregone conclusion, just something that's not even really thought about consciously, then there's no impetus to change. There's no reason to consider even changing. But asking the questions, I think, and prompting an exploration really moves that into the realm of, oh, this is happening because of choices that I make, not because it's just the way, oh, well, that's just the way things are. That's an enormous difference. You know, when you're having a meal and you say, oh, this isn't because it's just the way humans eat, it's because I'm making this choice to do this now. It's a mind shift that is critical, I believe.
So I see, the World Food Healers Day initiative that we announced during the convergence as a way to get people to imagine a post-human use world. Because a lot of these people who are hungry, they're really being used.
Yes.
Because they're the ones who actually grew the rice. I mean, the rice farmers are going hungry for 6 months, 3 months in the year, because their harvest is over and they don't have other things. They just grew rice, and they get 5 cents a pound for growing the rice, even though the rice is selling for $2 a pound in the supermarket. And on the other side, in order for them to buy any other food substance, it's costing them $10 a pound or $20 a pound,
Yeah.
because it's now coming back from the retailers
Yes.
in the cities back to the village. And by the time it gets to the village, it's all in smaller and smaller packages and more expensive. So in a way, we are really abusing them.
Yes.
I mean, we are making them do all the work, and then we're not feeding them. Okay.
So when you were just talking, Sailesh, something occurred to me.
Hmm.
When I first heard about the world, what is it? The World Food Healers Day.
Uh-huh.
All right. So that to me is an inspirational aspiration. It's inspiring to even think about it. And I think part of what I love about what you're doing is I find it inspiring. I think what we're trying to do with the post-animal use world is to inspire people so that it doesn't feel like a burden, but that they get to use their imaginations, again, whether it's in words, in song, in drawing, painting, in maybe we'll do verbal expression like this rather than having to write. Some people are more comfortable just talking than writing.
Right.
But so that they actually feel like their creative juices get going. So
Right.
you coming up with the World Food Healers Day, to me, is inspirational. It's exciting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I hear you. And
Yeah.
now it's about getting others to paint that picture as how are they going to do it or what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm not, Anne knows this about me. I don't like to cook. If I ever had a lot of money, the first thing I'd probably do is hire a cook. Okay. So it's just not my thing. I have lots of interests, but being in the kitchen is not one of them, but I do it. So, but you have got me thinking. I've already got a list of people that I am going to approach who I know who are very interested in cooking and feeding. And so I am inspired to spread this message. So that's kind of the mindset, I guess, that I'm hoping people are going to have when they start thinking about, well, what does this world look like if I'm not using animals anymore to wear shoes or to go to a zoo or to have a horse-drawn carriage ride, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, Sailesh, too, that as we were talking about how it impacts everything, it really is more far-reaching than just using animals. But because what I was thinking of as you were talking about that is just that how we're talking about entire economies and countries and economies, and the way the economies are structured is to use people, is to use animals. So it requires such a reframing of everything and of everything it's almost like everything you know is wrong. So telling people everything you ever learned, just throw that away. We're going to start fresh. And that's so I think in some one way or another we're all trying to do that. But when Suzanne and I think maybe this is the therapist in us, where we have this more gentle approach of saying, like, yeah, have you thought about this? Or what about this? What if this? More doing thought experiments, introducing it as more thought experiments than introducing it as everything you know is wrong, everything you ever learned. Say, well, what would it? The question that I've been starting to ask myself, but others too, is, what would it cost you to believe something different? Because in that sense, I'm trying to identify what is the fear that's kind of that's being held of what they would be losing, what they would be giving up by believing a different thing or by behaving in a different way. And then I find that with that, if I can, then if it's out and not just buried deep inside, if it's out, just like as in therapy, if it's out, then we can move with it. We can do something with it. We can process that and heal and grow. But if it's all kind of just unconscious stuff that's very deep from things we learned before we were 5 years old, then it's much harder to address. So that question has just kept coming into my mind over the past few months about what would it cost you to believe something different than that.
So as psychologist, let me ask you this. I've always wondered why people don't see that when the planet is dying, the fact that you're killing animals has something to do with it. I mean, it's like,
Yes.
right? You're killing so many animals and you're burning down forests, and they say, "Oh, that has got nothing to do with the fact that the planet is dying." And I say, "What?"
Yeah,
but
we're not always logical. We're not humans. We're not so logical.
Well, not only that, but Sailesh, you talked about the UN conference in Glasgow, right. Which was, to me, I couldn't believe what I was hearing when you said what you did. So here are these highly educated, sophisticated people, and they're out there, and it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. They're going like this, but there's something else going on behind the curtain, and they don't want you to see it.
Right.
And this is the world we live in. And guess what? I'm interested in this. I didn't understand how they really are not serious until I heard what you were saying. Now, I think the general population is way less educated about the connection between animal agriculture and the environment than I am. Most people are so busy just trying to raise their children, working 2 jobs, going to the parent-teacher, things and screaming at each other over masks, whatever. They don't have time to think about what is going on with the environment vis-a-vis animal agriculture. Plus, in this country, there's a whole group of people who don't think climate change is a real thing.
Right.
I mean, even President Biden, who came in on a platform to try to reduce fossil fuels, has really started going in the opposite direction now that we have the fuel crisis with Ukraine. And rather than saying, folks, could we sacrifice a little bit? During World War II, where there were food rations and you turned your lights out and all of that. I think if you ask people, we're willing to do stuff, but we don't get asked.
Right.
Yeah, it's such a big question, Sailesh, because I think it's so many reasons, it's so much, and some of those are pretty general. We can generalize a little bit, and some of those are just individual to each person. But I think that when it's very hard to believe sometimes when the things that you've learned when you were very young about what our relationship to animals is and what it means to eat them. I mean, if you put a cute little bunny in front of a toddler, they don't have an instinct to eat it, right? They just want to play with it. But they learn over so many years it was like very formative years about what that relationship is and what it means and how to compartmentalize. And our brains are very good at doing that. It's very good at, kind of putting something in one space. So these are the animals we eat, or these and these are the ones we love. There's lots of writing out there on that already. And then of course, then you enter governments and misinformation and ulterior motives for putting out misinformation. And depending on what government you have or what country you're in, there's I know in the United States here, there's this freedom thing that we saw highlighted with the mask usage. I mean, when you think about, well, if you just do this one sacrifice, you just wear a mask, then it will really help. And then there was a backlash of well, that's impinging on freedom, right? So it's so complicated. It's
the other thing that occurs to me, Sailesh, is our first culture is our nuclear family. And that is so foundational and for most of us, it's with us for the rest of our lives. And some of us have to, sort of see it for what it was, and the parts that were not useful, like work like the Dickens to change that. So that's just the immediate culture in the family. And then there's the culture of the community, and if you're raised in a religion, and if you go to a particular kind of school, et cetera, there are just layer after layer after layer of culture. And to really see clearly and see through those lenses, I think takes a lifetime. I don't know whether that makes sense, but
yeah, I hear you. It's just we are constantly conditioned.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, think about what had to be overcome to go vegan. That means we all had to, I had to disbelieve what my family taught me. I have to disbelieve almost every advertisement I see. I have to disbelieve the government recommendations on diet. I have to disbelieve my friends. There's so much to overcome. And then also there's this kind of human inclination to want to be part of, to be accepted. We're not animals that do well in isolation. We need community. So there's this pressure to conform to the existing norm, and to become vegan or do something like that, to do something that's very different than the cultural norm, I think it takes a tremendous amount of attention and effort and energy. So we just, I think what we're trying to do is prompt people to take that time and give it that attention and energy.
Right. Did you both have a chance to watch Glenn Mercer's presentation on, he calls it a convenient truth?
No, I did not.
It's on my list to watch, but I didn't get a chance to watch it.
Yes.
Yeah, I posted the video on the Trello board. So
because the title was very intriguing to me.
Yes. Okay.
It's tweaking Al Gore's nose, I think, calling it a convenient truth.
Yeah.
And but it's all about culture and why we need to be questioning our culture and how to. So again, it's how do we do it, right? So you think imagining a new culture would help people get off to the old?
Yes. It's and I don't think anybody has the answer to how you do this, but like why on that day that I was reading that book, or that I was even led to that book, and I was willing to read that chapter. So the whole chapter was not about animal agriculture. It was just one chapter, which I could have easily skipped over, but I didn't. And I have a sister who's, has a divinity degree from Harvard. She's one of the kindest, gentlest people I know. And she says to me, Suzanne, don't tell me. I don't want to know, because then I would have to change. So she even knows she's on the precipice, and she's saying, I don't want to go over that precipice.
Right.
It's such a strong, and she realizes that her life would change.
Right.
And if I look at my life before going vegan, the years and years and years before that, I've said some semblance of what your sister said, where I said, oh, that's too hard to look at, when it came to factory farming and so on. And then the book that inspired me had a similar chapter in it describing it. And the two authors, I think, it was so smart that they put the sentence in it that said, do not stop reading. If the animals have to endure it, the least you can do is read it. And it shamed me just enough that I continued to read. And then that was really a turning point for me. So, but it goes to show sometimes I always think that before that moment, that was really the turning point, the decision point. I had many priming experiences, points where your sister is, Suzanne, where I kind of got close, saw something, but turned away, rejected it in the moment. And then finally, I had gotten to a point after all of those times, those priming experiences, where I could no longer turn away. I could no longer reject it, and I had to act.
Yes.
So.
Right.
And Anne loves to say when we do these monthly online meetups with her I don't know what you'd call it, but her conversations with a friendly vegan. And one of the things that we talk about is it's okay to make people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was raised, you don't want to make people uncomfortable. So that's another cultural thing I have to overcome, that it's actually okay that if somebody starts squirming when I'm saying something, that's okay. It means I'm reaching them, not in a mean-spirited way, but that something is happening, something is getting activated in them, that maybe it's like pressing up against the consciousness and they're trying to push it down and I'm making it go up. So anyway.
Yeah, I think discomfort is actually a really important part of it, because I like Suzanne and like I think many, maybe it's, I guess it's a gender stereotype, but I know just many of my women friends, we were raised in this way to kind of be pleasant, make things nice, make things pleasant, be warm and friendly and inviting. And when we start to talk about topics that challenge people's existing, mindset, it's going to get a little uncomfortable. So we try to just approach it in a way that is like, that sends the message that it's okay if we're uncomfortable. Let's go for it anyway. Let's explore, and we can support each other through that. Because I get uncomfortable too when something I'm saying might prompt that reaction in someone. But we have to be okay with being uncomfortable. I think discomfort is what I felt when I read that book. And I needed to feel uncomfortable enough that it prompted me to make a change, a big change. Instead of I've lived too long avoiding it, and then not really being able to be authentic, because if you're always avoiding discomfort, you just can't be real. So it's been life-changing to see that. So
I'm not switching into interview mode here, but I do have a question.
Okay.
So Anne and I clearly want to appeal to the non-vegan audience, to the people who are not there yet. Otherwise, we're just preaching to the choir, and it's not a valuable use of our time. And I'm just wondering, Sailesh, because you're actually also trying to wake people up. And we had an experience last week that was very, very enlightening for us, where we were at a table at an entrepreneurs event. And we learned a lot about how foreign what we are trying to do is to them.
There was not a vegan in sight.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no. It was, and that wasn't the purpose of this gathering, but we thought, hey, let's go. Let's see what happens. Let's learn. And I'm just curious, as you've been doing this work, Sailesh, how you approach what we've been. I'm not even going to say it was an unfriendly audience. They weren't unfriendly. They had no idea what we were talking about. They thought we were peddling dog biscuits.
Because you have a paw on it.
Because it's paw. There's a perfect example of us being clueless. So we have the paw. I have my vegan chocolate chip cookies that I've made, and thankfully I didn't eat all of them before I got there. And so we've got the vegan chocolate chip cookies over here. We've got the paw logo over there. And people are saying, oh, are those dog biscuits? And I'm thinking, what are they talking about? So, I was clueless too. Anyway, that's a little aside, but do you have any pointers for us as we're trying to go out to audiences that really, this is not in their, it's not in their vision.
Right.
So
So one of the things that I found most effective, and I tried this out in Burning Man, of all places. My son took me to Burning Man, and I tried.
wow. Okay.
And so I would ask someone, may I ask you a question? And they'd say, of course. And I
Yeah.
would say, would you ever deliberately hurt an innocent animal unnecessarily?
Whoa.
And they would say, of course not. It occurs to them, what? Why would I
Yeah.
hurt an innocent animal unnecessarily? It's like,
Yes.
so many of these qualifications that say, absolutely no way.
Yes.
They even tell me, of course not. Then I'd say, then you're a vegan. In your heart, you're already vegan.
Yeah.
So that's
Yes.
the definition of veganism.
Yes.
So congratulations. They say, what? I'm not vegan. Yes, you are. You just answered my question.
And then would you leave it there or would you continue to talk?
Now I would ask them, and I mean, of course, I do this now in presentations also. I tend to ask this first if I'm talking to a non-vegan audience.
Yes.
And then once they establish that they are not in alignment with who they really are, they
Yes.
start to pay attention to what I'm saying.
That's
Until then,
really good.
yeah, until then they're like ignoring me, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, so it's kind of like if you're vegan at heart, then it's really just a few pesky behaviors we have to settle.
Right.
It as you're saying that, and it was something that I think we were talking about earlier. Carol Adams, she wrote The Sexual Politics of Meat and a bunch of other things. She's a longtime vegan activist, and she calls. So when I was trying to understand why I was getting so much hostility and pushback from people when I became vegan, she calls other people blocked. She uses the word vegetarian, but you could say blocked vegans, kind of like you were talking to the folks
Right.
at Burning Man. Like, would you ever, unnecessarily harm an innocent animal? No. Well, then you're vegan.
Right.
And her feeling is that most people in their hearts are.
Right.
But it's all this layering of culture that we were talking about that has obscured it.
Right.
So I love your approach. It's like boom, going right to the heart.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Yeah. I mean, please, everybody use it.
Yes. Why not?
It works.
Yeah.
And I also say that, discomfort. See, I see this transformation as opening of the chakras in human beings.
Yes.
And bringing us back in alignment with who we are. So we are really coming home to who we are.
Yes.
And to do that, we have to open our chakras. And the first chakra is fear. It's overcoming the fear of the change.
Yes.
Okay. So the next is guilt. It's overcoming the guilt of the change. And then the shame. And then the grief. The heart chakra is the grief. And the throat chakra is lies, overcoming lies.
Huh.
And this is about overcoming delusions, which is the lies that other people are telling us, and we bought into. And finally, it's attachment to the product. So that's the last one we need to let go. So I say that I sort of went through this moment where it's like all of them sort of came bubbled up within me. I had the guilt, I had the shame. I mean, tremendous shame I felt, right, when I realized that I was lying to myself. And because I think in the back of my mind I knew, and I was trying to suppress it, and pretend that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So I was thinking to myself, I was a vegetarian. Okay, when I went vegan, I was a vegetarian. And I was thinking, it's horrible. The dairy industry here is horrible, but we don't do that in India. So they could be doing it in a way that's kind to animals.
Yes.
We don't do this kind of stuff in India. And then I went to India and I saw what was going on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Then I was so shocked. I mean, it just jolted me out of my my reverie dream state, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
And then I remembered something that happened to me as a child, and that I had been suppressing
Huh.
for years, for 40 years. I'd been suppressing because as a child, I had, my parents used to send all of us to our grandparents' place in the village. Okay, and they were 500 miles away, so we had to get on a train and get there overnight. And then my grandparents, there were five of us. There were five children would go, and my grandparents, they had a cow, and so I overheard my grandmother tell my grandfather that this particular calf is drinking too much. He's not leaving any milk for the children.
Oh.
And what do I do? And my grandfather told my grandmother, don't let him drink to his fill, so pull him away after 10 minutes. And I realized as a child that there was something wrong going on.
Wow.
But, I tried to put it away in the back of my mind because I thought I had to drink this. I had to eat it. But that's what I was told. You need to drink this. You need to eat this. Otherwise, your bones are going to break,
Oh.
all this
Yes.
nonsense, right?
Yes.
So this is the conditioning and the scientific nonsense that we are fed
Yes.
as children, which is why I say lying to children should be a crime against humanity.
I loved when you said that the other night. I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they deserve to be told the truth at all times.
Yes. Yes. And that's a really powerful story you just told. I can imagine as a young child you're watching this and listening and thinking, what's going on here?
Right.
Wow.
So that memory sort of bubbled up, and that's where the guilt came from. And
Yes. Yes.
and the shame was realizing that it took me 48 years to figure this out. Like, what? And I
Yeah.
thought I was reasonably smart, right?
Exactly.
So, but Sailesh, I think one of the things that gives you is that experience and that knowledge and all of that gives you a way to bring that empathy when you're talking to other people, because it's not just as simple as here's the clear information, here's the proof. Now go forth and change your life. It's
Right.
not that simple. It's built on so many things. And of course, your grandparents and people's grandparents in general, most of them were well-meaning and just going on what they had learned, right? They weren't trying to. They thought they were doing the right thing by restricting the calf's access to the milk so that the children could have it. So it does just all of that. It's really like I'm touched by that story, and
It's
I
a
think
beautiful story.
and those stories are kind of what help people to really comprehend. We're not coming at it from this superior standpoint. I've eaten it all. I've lived that way, and for most of my life, and it took me a long time also to get to the point where I went through all of those stages. So I come to people with humility to say, I know what you're thinking or what's going on.
Right.
So it's a connection point. It's a great connection point that offers that bridge.
Yeah.
I also like to tell people that humans have a capacity to stick to what they know and not change, but then we also have a capacity to instantly change.
Yes.
Right. So we have done that so many times.
Yes.
So that gives people the expectation that there is a possibility of this instant change that could happen.
Yes.
And suddenly everything that you thought was normal becomes, hey, I don't do that anymore. We are no longer doing that anymore.
Right. Yes.
We're no longer making fun of gays. It's normal, like 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yes. Yes.
We don't do that anymore.
Yes. And there are so many examples of those kinds of events that occur that really change people's minds and then have this lasting impact. And yet I think so often those things happen spontaneously and naturally. It's almost like you can't fabricate it, even though it would be wonderful to know what could we do that would help people wake up and realize what's going on. But, you know, if I knew that, I'd have the key to I don't know what.
Problem solved.
Yeah,
Problem
exactly. But so
Well,
anyway.
thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh,
thank you.
it's we love doing it, and I'm so glad that we connected with you, Sailesh. It feels just, you know, I'm inspired by what you're doing. So
Same here.
Thank you. We are all in this together.
Yeah.
we are.
We are this.
And forever, any viewers, if you go to pawproject.com, we want your vision. We want to hear what you have to say. So that would be great. And our next stages are seeking out experts in various fields and publishers. So
yes,
just putting that out there, putting that out into the universe.
Yeah.
Yes, please connect with Anne and Suzanne at pawproject.com and send them your vision of a post-animal use world.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Sailesh. Oh, yes.
Namaste, vegan. Yes.
Thank you,
Frank, for coming
Love
up.
it. Thank you.